It's working now. Let's see. Refreshing. Refreshing. Alright, says we're live. Let's see if this is running okay. Yay. Okay. It looks like it's actually running smoothly now. But I'm gonna send you a link, Jaden. I want you to check it for me, too. Again. Here's a new link. Sending it on Discord. I sent you the link, the direct link. Hi, everyone! Hopefully no red ring of death. Yes, that would be very good to not have a red ring of death. Alright, anyway. Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about OCD, and particularly how to cope with OCD, and I'll be talking about my personal experience with OCD. And I have Jaden here, kind of just for moral support, because I didn't have like a guest on here today, so I figure, you know, I might as well just have you here anyway, just because it's more fun if it's not just me, so... Yay, smooth movement. Hello, Israel Brown. Welcome. And I don't know if Mary is still here, but hi. I hope you're watching. And yeah, so let's get started. Jaden, keep yourself muted unless unless you're gonna talk. We are in the same room, so we hear some echo.
You're still hearing echo?
Yeah, I'm still hearing echo. It's because it's picking up my voice, that's why, Jaden. So, yeah.
Yeah, right now I've got my system mic.
Oh.
It's down at 50%, so.
Oh, okay. One moment. All right, so
test. How's that?
Hi. I can still hear myself. I'm too loud. Just use push to talk. Here's me to tell. I invited him here, but here I am telling him to shut up.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that sensitivity is not enough for your quiet voice. You need to make it more sensitive. So,
Oh, man.
yeah, that's why I said just use push to talk, Jaden. So how's everybody? Israel, you said my cat won't let me listen. Cats are weird that way. Is your cat sitting on your laptop? Maybe that's it. Look at my hair just jutting out like one side. This is how I used to like point at people, just be like, hey you, stop right there in the name of the law. Okay. All right, you got it all set up over there, Jaden? Can I start?
Yes.
Yay! Okay, cool. Perfect, thank you. All right, so before we start, so let's talk about what exactly is OCD. So OCD is basically an anxiety disorder that involves intrusive thoughts and compulsions. And it's a little more than that. I'm gonna look up the DSM criteria for it. Probably DSM-5 OCD criteria. That way I can read to you word for word what they would use for the criteria if you were to go and get diagnosed. So, all right, so it involves the presence of obsessions, compulsions, or both. So obsessions are defined by recurrent and persistent thoughts, urges, or images that are experienced at some time during the disturbance as intrusive, unwanted, and that in most individuals causes marked anxiety or distress. And the individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges, or images, or to neutralize them with some thought or action, like by performing a compulsion. The obsessions or compulsions are time-consuming, like taking more than 1 hour a day, or cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And then there's like sort of the general stuff that they do with other disorders where they're like, the disturbance is not better explained by the symptoms of another mental disorder. Because I know that there are intrusive thoughts and anxiety associated with lots of different disorders, and that's why we have the DSM criteria to kind of help us figure out, you know, what's OCD versus like an anxiety disorder generally, or other similar disorders. So what's interesting also about OCD, if you've ever heard of the term pure O or pure obsessional OCD, it's not like an official term. It basically just means like you have mostly obsessions. It's mostly the obsessions. You might have some compulsions, but if you do, they would usually be very subtle or internal or kind of like almost invisible in a way. Or you could just have no compulsions. For example, I think a lot of my compulsions are very subtle. I don't know if I would say I have pure O, but I think I have a lot more intrusive thoughts than I do have compulsions. So for me personally, when I got diagnosed, it was very difficult to describe exactly what I was dealing with, because a lot of my compulsions were very sneaky, and I'm like, what's a compulsion and what's just like me being, you know, trying to be super clean or trying to like deal with sensory issues, because that's another thing, is that my sensory issues kind of cross over into things, because they can make me anxious, so then I might be very picky about how I have things, about for example, like I'm very sensitive to the feeling of like skin oil on my face. Like I can tell when my face is getting oily, and I just can't think of anything else, and I'll have to go and like wash my face until it doesn't feel oily, and I have like a skincare routine to prevent that from happening, because it's very distressing when it does. But it's not part of OCD. It's part of my autism, because it's more of a sensory thing. So yeah, very fun. Rage Master said, Special Books by Special Kids did a video of a woman with pure OCD. Oh, cool. I need to watch that one still. I love that channel. Highly recommend it. SBSK, or Special Books by Special Kids, they interview people with disabilities and kind of like to just normalize people with disabilities, because a lot of us are very isolated. So I do recommend watching that channel. It's very, very good. And I think he's also interviewed autistic people as well, which is pretty cool. Okay, so what my OCD looks like, because I've kind of figured it out by now, is that like I said, I mostly get intrusive thoughts. And what sets apart the intrusive thoughts from like other thoughts is that it's unwanted. It causes anxiety. It often also doesn't really align with like my personal values as well. So let's say a thought pops in my head that's, I don't know, like judgmental of another person. For some reason, I get a lot of those, even though I'm not really inherently a judgmental person, or at least I try not to be. Like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's hard to like tell people even that I have intrusive thoughts that involve judging other people, because then I feel like they're going to think that I am actually a judgmental person. But sometimes it'll be a thought like, let's see if I can give an example. Don't cancel me, okay? So and that's another thing, the nature of OCD thoughts is they can be like kind of like something that someone would feel very ashamed of because they're not like socially appropriate. But like one of the thoughts might be, let's say I'm walking down the street, and this might not be a very realistic one because I don't actually remember ever thinking this, but It's just an example. So let's say I'm walking down the street and I see someone who's kind of overweight, and my brain has the intrusive thought of, oh, that person's overweight because they're lazy. And I don't actually really think that. I am well aware of the fact that, like, there are lots of different factors in why someone might be overweight. And I try to be, like, compassionate about it and understanding and, like, not draw attention to that, because honestly, the most important thing is that person and who they are. Like, the other stuff doesn't really matter. So, but my brain will think that. And so what will happen is either I will think, oh my gosh, that's a horrible thing for me to think. Why would I think that? And then I will feel anxious about it and ashamed about it. I think shame is another big thing that they don't even really mention in the criteria, but that's like a big part of it. I'll like feel ashamed of having a thought like that. And then I'll either do that or like another route that I could go down to kind of bring some relief to that, to like, because I don't want to feel anxious. I'll either convince myself that no, I don't actually think this. Like, I'll try to logic through it and be like, no. Actually, there's lots of different reasons why people can be overweight. Like, I'm stating my opinions to myself. Like, I get into a debate about, like, with myself, if that makes sense. Like, which just sounds kind of silly, but I'll do that. Either that or my brain will be like, okay, why don't we just go the other opposite way and actually just think that we think that? Because either way, it's supposed to bring me some relief to make me feel better. Be like, oh, like, okay, this is fine. So, Steve Irwin says, by definition, an intrusive thought is a thought which causes distress to the person having it because they find the thought morally disgusting or disgusting in other means. Exactly. Like, there are different types of OCD, and one of them is, for example, I don't know actually what it's called, but it involves thoughts and worries that you could be a pedophile, even if you're totally not. You could, for example, you could see a child and you know, just like watch a child playing and think, oh, so cute, you know, because, you know, kids are cute. And then you start thinking, oh my gosh, because I think that kid is cute doesn't mean that, like, I'm a pedophile. Like, your brain can make these really crazy leaps with intrusive thoughts like that. You could be the most kind-hearted, wholesome person and end up with thoughts that make you feel like you're just the worst person ever. And it's interesting that you said, or disgusting in other means, Steve Irwin, because that's where, like, some of the more, like, the cleanliness ones might come into play. Like, if you have, like, compulsions for cleaning, you might feel very anxious at messes and things like that. What's funny is I feel anxious at messes, but with my executive dysfunction, I can't always keep up with it, so I'm sitting there feeling anxious all the time. That's fun. Happy birthday, David Mitchell. Awesome. Yeah, but what's funny is I've also noticed that the compulsions don't even really have to relate to the intrusive thought. It could be like, for example, let's say you have a cleaning compulsion, but your thought might not even have to do with, like, contamination or like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get sick because of all this bacteria or this or that. It could be something like, I am a failure as a person if I don't keep my house clean. Like, maybe and sometimes these can stem from real life stuff. Like, maybe you grew up with a family who, you know, let's say your mom keeps the house, like, sparkling clean, but you just don't have the same level of, like, habits when it comes to that. So then you, like, might develop that later and be like, oh my gosh, I need to keep my house clean because otherwise I'm not normal, because I perceive that, you know, my mom keeping the house clean, that's supposed to be normal, right? So stuff like that. Now, let me look at I have a little bit of a script, sort of. So, OCD is kind of like an addiction in a weird way, because it kind of involves, like, this feeling of distress and then a need to relieve the stress. And when you have an addiction to something like, let's say, alcohol or drugs, a lot of cases it's kind of a form of escape and escapism away from whatever is distressing you. Or it could just be that you're already hooked on it, you know. It can also be kind of a self-fulfilling cycle thing too. For example, with my intrusive thoughts, engaging with my intrusive thoughts can be actually kind of addicting. And one of my compulsions is Googling my intrusive thoughts, as weird as that sounds. I used to, this is what I mean by sneaky compulsions, because I didn't realize that was a compulsion until later on, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is feeding my OCD cycle. So what I would do is I would think, okay, let's say I think, I'm trying to think of a realistic one that I've actually thought that I'm okay sharing here. Because there are some weird thoughts, man. Weird thoughts. Okay. I'm gonna be kind of vague. Let's pretend like... usually there's a trigger at first, so this is how it works. Let's say I'm scrolling the internet. The internet's the worst place to be when you've got OCD. And a lot of other mental illnesses, honestly. So let's say I'm scrolling the internet, I'm on Facebook, and I come across like, or Twitter, it could be either. I come across people making really black and white, outrageous statements in the name of social justice or something. Like, I'm someone who's, I'm very progressive. Nice face, Jaden. I'm very progressive. Okay, and I'm all for like autistic rights, trans rights, LGBT rights. Those are all, you know, well and good, very noble things to pursue. But there are also some people in some corners of the internet who just, I don't know, they're more extreme. Like their methods are very extreme. And because I've grown up with, you know, being exposed to some extremist ideas, and especially in terms of religion. So like anytime I come across anything that's like very black and white like that, I am very, like that triggers me. So there's a trigger right there. Come across some really crazy statement from someone in the name of social justice. And so then my brain comes up with the intrusive thought of everyone from this particular marginalized group is fucking insane. When I know that's not true. I know logically that is not true, and I don't actually believe that deep down. So, but in order to make myself feel better, I can either feed the thought or push it away. And both of those, they might help in the short term, but they aren't very healthy. So with the Googling, that's usually when I'm engaging with the thought, when I'm trying to reinforce it and be like, okay, I'm gonna go look for other people online who have the same opinion so that I can feel better about myself. So I don't feel like I'm the only one who has had this thought. So I'll like look at forums and stuff and I'll be like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one who's thought this. Even if I don't actually believe that. And then that just kind of reinforces the whole thing. It's not great. And on the flip side, I can also feel relief at reassurance or like arguing against the thought. But even that kind of relief can feel addicting. And it's only temporary relief. It's like a drug that you eventually develop a resistance against, and at some point it won't work anymore, and your anxiety will just get worse. So yeah, so the question is, how do you deal with all of this? And I will get to that. I'll get to that. I have a script. So let me read some of your messages here. Steve Irwin says the greatest wrongs of the world are done in self-righteousness. Thought I had while on the porcelain throne. Excuse me. Toilet thoughts and shower thoughts, man. They're always the deepest thoughts. David Mitchell says, I'm going to do a shout out later on my video blog on my YouTube channel for you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. All right. Before I continue, Jane, do you have anything to add? Just because, like, you know, you're here and I've been talking the whole time, so. It's okay if not.
I just remembered.
Yeah.
We were talking about intrusive thoughts earlier, and like the definition of intrusive thoughts or whatever. I didn't realize that that's, you know, what that whole thing was. I've actually dealt with that before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Still do.
It's up to you, but would you be okay, like sharing a little bit about your experience with it? Totally optional, because I know it can be kind of a touchy topic.
Yeah, I won't go into like specifics on like what they are exactly, but it's basically exactly what the definition, you know, is that, you know, there's, you know, something that pops in there, and then I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, my Windows sounds just went off randomly. I'm gonna mute that. Yeah. Well, it's good to know I'm not the only one. And I'm glad to know that, like, me defining it kind of helped you kind of figure that out. Because I think it's really hard to tell the difference between, like, an intrusive thought and, like, an actual thought sometimes.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. And that's something I'm actually gonna touch on next. First, let me read what Steve Irwin says. OCD is like having a 12-year-old from the Call of Duty lobby yelling the worst obscenities in your brain. Yep. The problem comes from feeling guilt since these thoughts come from our own head. Exactly. And you know, I'm gonna remember what you just said, Steve, because this goes very well with how I would cope with OCD. It just made me think of something, and I will get to that. But first, let's talk a little bit about how do you tell the difference between intrusive thoughts and quote-unquote real thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are unwanted. They do not resonate with who you are as a person, and they cause anxiety and agitation and or last a long time or pop up frequently without you wanting them there. And then real thoughts, they can still involve anxiety, but the difference is that they do resonate with you as a person. For instance, if you're not the type of person who would, I don't know, throw a baby off a bridge and you randomly have a thought about it, that thought's probably intrusive. But if you have a thought like, you know, let's say, like I've said, you know, my opinions about, you know, things like LGBT, trans rights and stuff, I'm like, woo, all for that. So that's something that does resonate with me. That's like real thoughts right there and not like intrusive ones. Doesn't mean I can't be pissed off at like individual people in the group for like just saying the most crazy stuff, but doesn't mean I'm like not for that cause, if that makes sense. And yeah, and I've had similar experiences also in the autistic community. Like pretty much every group that I've come across, there seems to be a few outliers who just have the craziest, most extreme takes. So occasional intrusive thoughts are normal, even in people without OCD, but it becomes a problem when they're hard to turn off or they cause significant distress. And most people don't take intrusive thoughts seriously and can brush them aside, but if they keep popping up all the time, it's no wonder folks with OCD wonder if like something's genuinely wrong with them and that these thoughts, you know, maybe they're true, even if they're not. But yeah, so when it comes to compulsions, like how do you tell what's a compulsion and what's not a compulsion? That's also another really complicated thing that I had to figure out with the help of a therapist, because I'm like, what's an action that's just normal and what's a compulsion? And I figured out the Google search compulsion that I had, like that's a compulsion. It was kind of an invisible, subtle one that I didn't notice until I started noticing a pattern. And the pattern I noticed is that it was causing anxiety. Like even when I was in the process of Googling, it's like maybe I felt relief by the end of it, but I felt anxious throughout the whole thing. And I'm like, this is not helping. and then it wouldn't help me later. Like, I would have the same exact intrusive thought pop up more than once. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've already sought out reassurance on this before. So why am I not reassured? Why am I still finding the need to Google my thoughts and to find some kind of resolution? I don't know. That's kind of how I figured out that it was a compulsion, because it wasn't doing anything really to help the anxiety at all. It might have helped, like, you know, in that moment, but it would just come back up later. And yeah, I don't know. Jaden, have you had any experience like with compulsions, whether they're, you know, kind of obvious external ones or more like internal, trying to argue with them or seek reassurance, things like that?
Yeah, in the past, I used to double and triple check and even quadruple check stuff like locks or my clock alarm, or just stuff like that. And like it was kind of annoying at the time. Thankfully that didn't last very long, because yeah, it was uncomfortable at best.
Sorry, it probably looked like I was like sniffing your character for a second, because I leaned over to, I had tea, okay? I had a cup of tea, and I leaned over to put the tea bag into the garbage, and my character just like got stuck staring like 3 inches away from Jaden's avatar. So for those actually watching, you probably already saw that, but yeah. Wanted to describe it for the listeners. It's a beautiful moment right there. But yeah, that's like, those are some good examples of some pretty common ones that people have too, like checking locks. I had a friend who would frequently check the stove. She has OCD as well. He was like, oh, did I turn off the stove? Did I turn off the stove? But yeah,
I still
it's
do
like,
that one.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because to some degree, some of it's rational. Like, you know, you don't want to accidentally leave the stove on or the water on because it'll cause a disaster. You don't want to leave your doors unlocked because someone could break in. But after, like, my opinion is after the second or third time of checking, it's like, okay, now we're getting into compulsion territory, and don't check anymore. Because you're absolutely sure. And sometimes like memory problems can be part of it too. Like both me and Jaden have crappy memories, so that's part of maybe one reason why I check something a bunch of times. So it's fun.
Same here. I'm pretty sure that contributed to it.
That would make sense. Steve Irwin says I still double check locks when I'm stressed. Yeah. And Ragemaster said OCD can mean being obsessed with cleaning and making everything neat and perfect, right? That can be part of it. Like, you might have compulsions that look like that. Some people think that that's all OCD is. Like, it's just you're obsessed with keeping things clean and neat and perfect and organized, but it's kind of a misconception about OCD. Like, some people can have that as a compulsion, but I think people don't understand, like, why that happens. Like, in some people, it could be a fear of contamination, be like, oh my gosh, if I don't clean, like, I'm gonna get sick, or my family will get sick and die. Like, your brain can come up with the craziest scenarios, which is very anxiety inducing and makes you want to clean. And again, like I said before, it could be unrelated to contamination as well. It could be like, oh, I'm a failure as a person if I don't clean. And some people don't have that at all. Like, I know people with OCD who are just the complete opposite, that they're not neat and clean. They, in a lot of cases, can be actually really messy and can end up being hoarders as well. So it can come from both sides. And that can also be fueled by intrusive thoughts. Like when someone's a hoarder, for example, I think that's actually, I wonder how common that is with OCD. I know it's a thing where, you might fear that you're going to lose your memories of certain events if you don't keep like every little piece of garbage that you collected from the event, things like that. Could be like very sentimental, but also very anxiety driven for sure. So hi, Afro Teddy Bear. Hi, why do you always stream when I'm about to go to bed? I am so sorry. I know there is a time zone difference. You can always watch the VODs after the fact. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about coping mechanisms. And I actually kind of want to start with, let's see. I'm going to start with this one point I had written down here. One moment, I need a sip of tea because I've been talking for a while. Ah, delicious. This is Chinese restaurant tea. Very good. Yes, hydrate. Thank you. Okay, so one way that I deal with this is, and this came to me when I was learning about schizophrenia, believe it or not. There was this, and I know everyone with schizophrenia is different. This is just one person's experience with schizophrenia who had visual hallucinations that were very distressing and scary. And how they dealt with it was mostly ignoring it and, looking away from it, not giving it any attention, because anytime they would try and look at it or give it too much attention, it would get worse. Like, it might get bigger, it might move around and be scarier. And that kind of got me thinking about how the way that intrusive thoughts work. And obviously they're not the same as having visual or auditory hallucinations, but because they are unwelcome, they do kind of just pop up without you meaning them to. For me, I found it almost works a similar way, where if I give them too much attention, they get worse. So I try and think of it like, the visual hallucinations, where it's like, okay, don't pay them any mind. And it's tricky because you also don't want to worry about not paying them any mind, because that could also be bad. It's like saying, don't think about it, 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 and then you're, oh God, I'm thinking about it. No, it's more like, it's just there. Just accept that it's there. It's like a roommate that you don't like, but you gotta live with. They're just kind of there. And going back to what Steve Irwin said about OCD being like a 12-year-old in a Call of Duty lobby yelling obscenities in your brain, that's actually a really great way to look at intrusive thoughts. If you think of it like something like that, you're not gonna take a 12-year-old yelling obscenities seriously, right? Because it's literally just a 12-year-old yelling its obscenities. And that's not saying that won't be annoying, or they're not capable of saying things that are like hurtful, but it kind of making it seem like it's kind of trivial, I think kind of helps in a way. And there's actually a video that, I meant to actually post it in my Discord server. I came across a YouTube short of someone describing basically how they would deal with intrusive thoughts. How they put it was, just put on a party hat and invite them in. Because otherwise it's like your brain just makes it a bigger deal than it is. I'm gonna find that video and post it eventually. If you're not in my Discord server, please join. It's great. It's called the Waffle Zone. It's awesome. We have monthly movie nights. We do all kinds of fun stuff there. And I'll probably post more stuff on OCD as well. There's a section that's just for this channel and that server, where I'm probably going to continue this discussion as well. So if you'd like to join, I'm going to post a link in the chat here. Yeah, the Discord command doesn't work. So here's a link if you're listening on Spotify or on Anchor. There should be a link to the Discord server on my WaffleCast Anchor website in the description. So do check that out. So, yay. My voice is dying a little bit. So, Jaden, I was wondering if there's any advice that you would give to people for dealing with intrusive thoughts and avoiding compulsions and things like that.
I'm not really sure how you would avoid it. But I think it's important to keep in mind that, it's something that is beyond your control. And I know that, some people out there might blame themselves for, having to deal with all of it, or they feel self-conscious about it, and it's not your fault. It's it's something that's happening to you, not because of you.
Exactly. Sorry, I was drinking some, I don't know if you heard me open a can. I was opening the can of fizzy water. I love fizzy water so much. So that's actually really great advice. Like, it's your brain that's misfiring, and you know, this is it's not your fault, because you're not, especially if you have thoughts that don't really actually resonate with you. You're not a bad person. Your brain is just being a big butt.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, a big butt. Big stinky butt. Afro Teddy Bear says how do you pronounce it? Tangentially related. I recently found out I have trypophobia. Realizing what my trigger was, anxiety, was the first step in treating it. Yeah, that's awesome. It can be tough to treat phobias, for sure. I had a thought, though, going off of what you were saying, Jade, and I'm trying to get it back. Reel it back in. Come back to me. Here, do a sound effect. Do a sound effect of reeling the thought back in. Oh no, did the line break? Oh no! That must have been a big one. That was a big intrusive thought. Oh no! Man, I was hoping to eat that for dinner tonight and feel all the anxiety from the giant intrusive thought. I don't want that. No, I'm good. Okay, so because I lost my thought, what were we talking about? What were you saying before about coping with it? Oh yeah, that it's knowing that it's not your fault. I think depersonalizing from it is really important. Kind of like the whole, it's just a 12-year-old kid in Call of Duty yelling obscenities. And, oh god, I had another thought on that. Where is it, Jaden? Where did you put my thought? It's not in my pocket. Gosh darn it. Maybe it'll come back to me. But for now, a couple other things that I do to deal with this. One thing is, sort of when I have an intrusive thought, I will change my body position or my body language. Like if I was sitting down when I had the thought, I will stand up instead. Because the body movement just kind of forces my brain to refocus. Either that, or I will make my body language match how I want to feel, like confident, and it makes my brain switch gears. So if I figure out that I'm slouching, this is why body awareness is so important when you have an anxiety disorder. Like if I have been sitting down and slouching when I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and I notice that, I'll be like, wait a minute, what does a confident person do? A confident person sits up. So I'll sit up straight and I will sit in a way fit for a queen. I will sit like the Jarls in Skyrim with my arm on my armrest, all dainty-like and magnificent. So I feel like confident. I mean, I might not do that exact thing. I have done that before. It kind of weirdly does help, but just change your body language that reflects how you want to feel, and that can actually kind of switch gears in your brain. That kind of reminds me of there are two sort of methods of approaching how to calm your fight or flight response. I don't know, or was it for just general anxiety? I gotta find it. It was like, I'm gonna look it up. It's like top down or bottom up or top down. I'm gonna find an article or something on this, or there was a picture too. If I find the picture, I will post it in the Discord, but there was this, ooh, I got it. I found it. Top-down therapy or bottom-up therapy. So, okay. You know what? I can probably put this onto the stream as well. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put it on the screen, okay? I'm gonna show you this this thing, and if you're listening, just feel free to join our Discord, and I'll describe it too. That'll probably be enough. So let me see if I can grab this picture here, because I think it's very important. That's why I want to show it to y'all. Okay. So I don't know if you can see this here. It's probably going to cover our faces, but here we go. So we have, this is top-down therapy versus bottom-up therapy. Top-down therapy is change the thought to change how you feel, like cognitive therapies, CBT, narrative therapy. So the picture is on one side, there's two different triangles, and they both have three different colors. They're both the same. There's the tippy top is green, the middle is blue, the bottom is red. The top, the green part is for describing the rational brain. The middle blue part is the emotional brain, and the bottom red part is the survival brain. So when we're talking about top-down therapy, we're starting from the rational brain, which will kind of have a trickle-down effect into the emotional and the survival brain. Bottom-up therapy is the reverse of this. It is to transform feelings and body sensations to change thoughts. Like, I don't know how to pronounce this word though. Sensory motor, somatic therapies, and EMDR. For those who don't know, EMDR is it's a trauma therapy that utilizes eye movements to kind of rewire your brain and its connection, emotional connection and memories and things like that. As opposed to like CBT, when I mentioned CBT, that's cognitive behavior therapy. That's more with the top-down side. That's what they use a lot for OCD, which is sort of like rationally explaining like, this thought does not resonate with you and here's why, and here are some things, triggers that caused it. It's just a very like rational analysis of it. As opposed to like the advice that I gave of changing your body language, that would fit more with bottom-up therapy. And I find that in a lot of cases, that almost works better for me. And what works for one person might not work for another person. So, but yeah, I'm gonna post this picture in the Discord. So if you're not already in there, like, please do join. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in. Actually, I don't know where to put it. I'm gonna put it in the WaffleCast channel. We have a WaffleCast channel where the intention of the channel originally is to kind of collab and come up with ideas for WaffleCast. So if anyone's like interested in talking about a certain topic and just want to throw in some ideas of topics and stuff, like feel free to do that if you're in the Discord. So let me go ahead and turn this off. Boop. Now you can see us again. Yeah. But yeah, I generally find it very helpful to figure out which one of those methods will work for each individual situation, because there are some triggers where the top-down, the more rational way of dealing with it works really well, and there are situations where the bottom-up, the more survival, body-mind connection part of it, mindfulness thing works better. For example, when I was deconstructing some like kind of extremist religious stuff that I grew up with, the top-down method helped. I had to kind of rationally explore my personal beliefs before I could calm down some of my anxiety triggers around extremism. And I still have anxiety triggers around extremism, but they have lessened a lot because of my rational kind of analysis of all of that stuff. And now with whatever's left over, I kind of just use the bottom up, where I have to change my body language. I have to kind of use mindfulness to calm myself down. So I hope that helps some people. This wasn't even part of my script, but I just remembered it and I thought it would be really important. So yeah, do you have anything to share on that topic before I move on to the next point, Jaden?
Um, I was just thinking about, the two types of therapy for that, and I got thinking, wouldn't like playing video games be a form of bottom up?
I mean, I would say so. I think it really depends on what video games do for you specifically, because for some people it might be a more of a dissociative thing, which is, and that's actually interesting to think about, because some ways of dealing with intrusive thoughts and anxieties can be dissociative, and sometimes they're actually healthy, sometimes they're not. But sometimes it could be a dissociative thing, I think, to play video games is kind of a distraction. Sometimes it could be a grounding thing, which I think for you is kind of grounding, right? Or maybe a little bit of both, because it's kind of distracting
for me,
too.
it's a little bit of both, because I use video games to cope with anxiety. I've used it to cope with circumstance, and like if I'm like upset about something, I'll sometimes play a video game to get away from that too.
Do you feel like using video games in, like, how do I put it, like the dissociative kind of side of that, where it's like distraction from stuff, does that seem to help with things that are outside of your control? Because I feel like that would be a thing.
Yeah, it really does. Most of the time it's because it takes my mind away from it, but every now and then my brain doesn't let me move away from whatever I can't change. Like, it'll just constantly be there bothering me, and in those cases I tend to play video games long term, and eventually I reach a point where I can actually move forward without having that thought anymore.
Okay, so that's kind of like an internal thing that you've got to get through over time. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, like, it's got me thinking about, like, how circumstances really play a part in anxieties and intrusive thoughts. Because, both me and Jane are low income, and we, like, we deal with, sometimes not having things that we need, and or dealing with the fear of, like, I mean, this isn't a fear for me, I know for you, like, you worry that your rent's gonna go up, like, you where are you gonna go, like, it's really difficult to find housing these days. Like, that's a rational fear to have, but at some level, especially because you're disabled, it's not really within your control. And maybe someday, like, things will get better, and you'll be able to if you needed housing elsewhere, maybe you'll find a place that's actually affordable, which would be great. But for now, it's, like, not really possible. So boop, hang on, I'm just switching my music around here. I have a lot of nice sounding music. All right, so what was I saying? Because I was gonna say, like, when there is something that you can control, though, I think that's when the dissociative side, the kind of distraction-based ways of coping and, like, compulsions and stuff like that, can be kind of, like, maladaptive. Like, if, for example, you have extreme anxiety about washing your dishes. I know me and you deal with that, and part of that also is executive dysfunction as well, so that kind of complicates it. But if, let's say, you do have the energy for it one day, but you're like, I still don't want to, and I would rather play video games, that's when it's more maladaptive, because, like, you gotta do it, right? And so at that point, how I would kind of approach that is be like, all right, I'll give myself like 20 minutes, do something I want to do, play video games, whatever. I mean, I don't play a whole lot of video games. I do other stuff usually to distract myself, like watching shows. But I'll kind of give myself a time limit and be like, all right, I'll do this for a little while, and then I'll go and do what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I kind of try to do that with my compulsions as well. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, like, with me, I don't really put a time limit on the thing for me personally, mainly because I find that time limits actually hinder the process. But, like, what I'll do is, like you said, I'll play a video game for a little while, and then I'll make sure that, like, my dishes are are in super hot water, so like the water won't be cold when I go back to it 9 times out of 10, and usually the hot water also helps clean them as well, so it's not as hard to scrub them down or whatever. So I found a process that's somewhat beneficial for myself specifically, even if it does take a few hours to do it.
Like a executive dysfunction hack.
Yeah, pretty much.
So like with you, like, and also I know your sense of time isn't like great too. So
yeah, I'm terrible with time.
Yeah, so it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't like time yourself necessarily. You kind of go by feel, I think. Like, you know, okay, I feel like I've played enough games to the point that like I'm satisfied. Now I'm gonna go do the next step of washing dishes, kind of breaking it down, which is really, I think, a great method to use.
Yeah, it's pretty much a matter of, you know, I because, you know, video games tend to energize me, and you know, when I've played video games enough to energize myself enough to take the next step, that's usually when I am able to go and actually take that next step. And that works for me 9 times out of 10.
Hello? Oh, sorry, I muted myself. Can you hear me? This is funny to see Jane laughing at me now. Sorry. So I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about reassurance seeking, because that's kind of a very common big struggle for a lot of people with OCD. And their families as well, like, and people that they know. Like, they might have a thought, like, you know, let's say they have a thought that they're, like, a bad person, for example. Like, oh my gosh, am I a bad person? And so they go and they ask their friend or a family member something like, do you think I'm a bad person? And the other person's like, oh, no, you're not a bad person. It's like, you're a good person. And it's like that.
And then your brain is like, but they're supposed to be nice and say that because they're family or friends or whatever.
Oh no. Yeah, that can happen
I hate when that
too.
happens.
Oh no. And it's like, and where some people though, they might actually feel better hearing that. Like, oh no, you're a good person. And sometimes it might take some convincing for some people to be like, you really got to reassure them before they feel better. But you know, usually at some point they might feel a little bit better. For the time being. Like I said, it's like an addiction where you kind of can develop a resistance against the relief that you feel from things like seeking reassurance or doing compulsions. Seeking reassurance is a compulsion, in case you didn't know. And it's kind of one of those really sneaky ones that you know, loved ones of people with OCD can accidentally fall into, kind of accidentally feeding that. And know that if you do, it's not your fault. Like, you mean well, you're trying to help them feel better. That's like what anybody would probably do. But like, sometimes that can make things worse. It might not be an issue for some people with OCD. Like, sometimes they actually are genuinely seeking reassurance in kind of a normal, healthy way. But I think it becomes a problem if, like, you need to keep reassuring them on, like, the same stuff all the time. Or even if it's not the same stuff, if they just keep coming back to you for reassurance on, like, lots of different things. Because sometimes the focus of the OCD can change as well. It could be, like, it could go from, am I a bad person, to did I leave the door unlocked? Or to, like, do you think I would do this horrendous act? Things like that. That's like a really tough one. And sometimes you can end up doing this to yourself as well. You can end up reassuring yourself in a way that is also maladaptive. And that's also what I mean when I talk about like the really sneaky compulsions, the internal compulsions that can happen. Where you're arguing with yourself, or you're reassuring yourself, I'm not a bad person, kind of thing. And that kind of brings me to something that I've heard of, or that I learned recently, not recently. Actually, I learned this term a long time ago, but this concept of radical acceptance. I'm gonna actually look it up just so I can make sure. I don't like misquoting it, because it's an actual like proper psychological term. Radical acceptance. I'm gonna look up. I'm gonna see if I can find like a source that is a good source. Oh, I found a video on it actually. I'm gonna share this in the WaffleCast as well. I'm gonna share this in the Discord server in the WaffleCast channel if you want to see. This is a video I've seen before on radical acceptance. It's basically, let's see if I can. I'm trying to get the gist of it because it's been a while. Sorry, I'm gonna try and find a source that isn't a video because it's gonna like take forever otherwise. In the meantime, though, let's talk a little bit about some other ways of dealing with anxiety. And one of the ways that I have found that helps is kind of just sitting with the anxiety while not engaging. I've kind of like covered this already, but like not seeking reassurance, but also not challenging the thoughts or trying to argue with them. Kind of seeing it as this is just kind of a unpleasant sort of a roommate that you have to deal with, and they're in the other room doing their own thing, yelling their obscenities like the 12-year-old that they are, and you're just in the other room chilling, doing your own thing, and you don't have to pay attention to them. They're just kind of there. Okay, so I am having a hard time finding there's also something called ACT, A-C-T, or acceptance and commitment therapy as well. And I'm gonna post some resources on both of these things in the Discord as well. I guess I could describe what my experience with radical acceptance has been, even if it's not like the actual definition. Let's see. Ooh, I'm gonna read this quote here. While pain is part of life, radical acceptance allows us to keep that pain from becoming suffering. By accepting the facts of reality without responding by throwing a tantrum or willful negligence, in other words, it is what it is. That's more of a general thing. That's more of like if you're trying to not like ruminate on circumstances, for example, like rather than Jaden, for example, ruminating on the possibility of his rent going up, he instead just kind of just like, well, it is what it is, and then just kind of does other stuff. And that's, I think, a really good way to deal with it. For me, and specifically with dealing with intrusive thoughts, because there's so much shame around the thoughts, I've had to kind of think, hypothetically, what if I actually thought this? And not saying that in an anxious way. Just being like, for instance, what if I actually was a bigoted asshole? That sounds really weird, but kind of just accepting that these thoughts are there. Not really, I don't know how to put it. It's like just not putting any weight on it, if that makes any sense. Not actually letting myself become a bigoted asshole is very important, of course, but like letting myself think those thoughts and think like, you know what? Thought policing? Such a stupid thing to do. It's so stupid. I grew up, like I said, with some being exposed to some extremist religious ideas, and some of those ideas very much promoted thought policing. And one example is, if you've ever heard of purity culture, now I'm gonna get into some weird shit. Okay, trigger warning if you grew up in the church, especially Christian fundamentalist evangelical church things and grew up with purity culture, I'm going to get into some details. So purity culture is basically, in a lot of Christian circles at least, is usually a group of a couple ideas. Some of those are like, you shouldn't have sex with people before marriage. Being gay is a sin. What else? What else is there? I don't know. Basically, there's a lot of shame around sexuality in this kind of culture. And in some cases, it can go so far as to demonize even your thoughts. Like, it could be as far as, like, if, like, people will quote this Bible verse about, like, it's like, oh, if you so much as look at a woman lustfully, it's the same as having, done things sexually with her. And it's like, no, actually it's not. It's just, it's just in your head. And some other ideas going around are things like, if you even get too emotionally involved with someone, like, that's the same thing as having, like, had sex before marriage and stuff like that. Like, it's like the whole idea of, like, oh, I want to hold your hand, that means I already have. And I think growing up with that kind of fueled having a lot more shame around my thoughts, because it's like, oh, because I think this means, like, I'm gonna do it, right? Or I already have. And so, I'm sorry, this is, like, hard to talk about, and so my brain has gone a little fuzzy, and I'm trying to bring myself back. Where was I going with this, Shaden? Why did I bring this up?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Why do I ask you? Your memory's as bad as mine, so...
Yep.
I think the point why I brought this up is that basically there is, like, a lot of thought policing in that kind of culture. And something I really had to learn was that it's totally okay to think thoughts. And that no matter how horrible the thoughts are, even if they're, they're intrusive or whatever, like, it's not, doesn't mean you're a bad person. Like, for example, like, maybe you really like horror movies or something. That doesn't mean you're gonna go out and become, like, a serial killer and just, like, kill a bunch of people. If that makes sense. There needs to be a separation between your brain and, like, your actions. And I have to keep reminding myself of that all the time. When I get these thoughts about people that are judgmental, or, like, even if they are genuinely judgmental, like, if it's not an intrusive thought, because I'm not perfect, I'm not going to just blame everything on my OCD. If I have a thought that is kind of judgmental about someone, I have to remind myself that, like, obviously it's not healthy to ruminate on judgment, because that can turn into actions. But what ultimately matters is how I respond to that person. How do I treat that person? Because no matter what I think of someone, I should be kind to them whenever I can. Or at the very least, like, tolerate them, be civil with them, because I don't want to... Here I go again. I don't want to be a bad person. The important thing, I think, is not ruminating about the potential of just being a bad person, I guess. I don't know. Just accepting that we're all human and that your thoughts, like, it's okay to think thoughts. I think that was part of the whole radical acceptance thing for me, is like, it doesn't matter what you think, as long as, like, your actions are good, I guess, if that makes sense. See, now I can see that also feeding an OCD thought process. My brain, like, as I'm talking about this, I'm like, oh God, poor person with OCD is going to ruminate over, like, it's like, okay, but what if I do the actions? What if I do the actions, Alyssa? Stop thinking about the potential of doing the actions. You haven't done anything. Oh, great, now I'm giving them reassurance. Crap. So some other things. Sorry, do you have anything to say, Jaden? I'm just being weird.
Nope.
Okay. I have two more things to cover. Very brief, but so Steve Irwin says it's not premarital sex if you never get married. That's kind of one way I look at it, but the in that culture, the assumption is that like you will get married, and if you don't, there's like something wrong with you. Or if you don't, like you're just destined to like remain single for God, like, you know, just like your purpose is to do stuff in the church, and that's about it. It's like, nah, I can do what I want with my life. All right, I'm not going to talk about that very much. So another way that I deal with my OCD is, like, obviously sometimes avoidance is not healthy, but this is a case when it is, okay? So blocking apps on my phone, blocking my access to Google, stuff like that, especially if I recognize that I am starting to do a compulsion, I will stop myself in the middle of it. I'm going to be like, okay, no sitting here feeling bad that I've given into this, and instead I'm just going to put my phone down. I'm going to stick it in the other room, or I'm going to block an app if I still need to have my phone around me. I have an app called Stay Focused. Let's see. Actually, I have two different ones. I have an app called App Block. If anybody wants the link to these, please let me know. I will send it in the chat here, and I can also send it on the Discord as well. This is for Android, by the way. I have something called App Block, and that's more like for kind of generally blocking apps. You can block apps at certain times of the day. You can block notifications for the apps, I think, with this one. And then I also use Stay Focused for more specific control. Like if I want to only allow myself to use specific apps for, like, let's say if I want to use Twitter 8 minutes per hour. That's actually what I have set. I can only use Twitter for 8 minutes per hour. Like once that 8 minutes is up, it blocks it until the next hour. You know, it's never healthy to spend that much time on Twitter anyway, so that makes sense. And stuff like YouTube. I kind of use YouTube for self-regulation at times, and sometimes for having something to play in the background. But if I'm sitting there actively watching YouTube, you know, with the screen on YouTube for an hour and a half, it'll be like, all right, that's all your YouTube for the day, and it blocks it for the rest of the day. And then I only get, I think, like a half hour each hour or something like that. But like a total of an hour and 30 minutes. And that actually helps a lot. And if I absolutely need to use Facebook, Meta, how dare you put that in my mouth? If I need to use YouTube for sort of like ADHD background noise when I'm doing dishes, as I often do, like I can always disable that if I need to, or I can, you know, have YouTube playing in the background because I've got YouTube Premium. I know I'm so privileged, but because I know usually YouTube, if you don't have Premium, doesn't let you play videos in the background. But that's a way I also get around the filter, but it also makes videos less enjoyable. So I only use that for listening if I'm, you know, washing dishes or something. That's usually when I'm not using it for OCD purposes. So I have it set up in such a way that it kind of perfectly accommodates to like all my different issues that I have, and, you know, help motivate me without feeding the OCD. I think you can also put Stay Focused on a schedule as well. I also use it for blocking just general social media. And you can set different profiles. Like if you're working and you're like, okay, I'm getting way too many notifications right now and it's stressing me out. You can just, you know, set up a profile that'll just block all of that, and you just hit play on it, and boom, everything's blocked for, I don't know, the next hour or however long you've set it for. So I hope that helps some people. Let me know again if you need any links to those. This is not sponsored or anything by them. I just really like the apps. Another way that I deal with it is writing my thoughts out sometimes, in a way that doesn't, I guess, sort of overly engage with the intrusive thoughts in a bad way. Before I get into that, though, do you have anything to add, Jaden? I need a drink.
I don't think so.
This is probably comical for people watching when I just like take a break to take a drink, because then like my character spazzes out and like my boobies jiggle and stuff. I swear this isn't that kind of show. Oh yeah, so like I said, I will sometimes write out my thoughts, and this helps me in general. This helps with my executive dysfunction. This helps with like when my brain's just generally not working. And I use on my phone, I use something called JotterPad. I think they have like a paid version now, which is really annoying. So I don't tell anyone. I use an older version of the app so that I can use all of the stuff that I need, like a dark theme. I think they got that behind a paywall now, but yeah, I use an app called JotterPad where I just like, I open it up and I just type. It's just a very simple like notepad app. Like when I type out my thoughts, like even just things I have to do that day, it kind of puts things into perspective. Like it's like, all right, I don't have time to be ruminating. It's like, oh, I got to do this today. I'll be writing like, oh, I want to have pancakes for breakfast. Ooh, what else I should do? And then just if I have any random thought spews I want to throw in there, I can. And on the computer, I use a website called Writer or Internet Typewriter. I don't know. It's by Big Huge Labs. That's what it's called. I'm gonna send a link to that just because I have it right here. Here you go. It's pretty awesome. You can have like a typewriter sound effects. I've been talking so long that my mouth won't work. You can have a typewriter sound effect. It is very stimmy. Very, very stimmy. Now that I have a mechanical keyboard, I don't necessarily need the sound effects. But it makes it much more stimmy to type. And it's kind of a nice way of drawing me in. It's like mindfulness to just type on that thing. And it's, again, like a very simple notepad kind of app. And you can set like a custom dark theme or any theme, honestly. You can set the background and the text to any color. And it's very fun. Now, the last thing I have here is CBT Thought Record. This is something a friend of mine recommended when I was first figuring out that I had OCD. And I'm going to bring up a link to this. CBT, or cognitive behavior therapy, is part of this. Alrighty. I think I gotta figure out which one I use. And make sure that I pick one that's actually readable, because some of these images are not great. Here we go. I'm gonna send a link in the chat here. And I'll also post it in WaffleCast as well. There we go. Or post it in the WaffleCast channel in Discord. So a CBT Thought Record is, it's got these different sections. You can print this out, you can write on it. If you prefer not to write, I really wish I had like a digital version of this somewhere. I don't like where you can type on it, but it'll have these different sections that'll ask you what happened, like when you had the thought, like where were you when you had this thought? What were you doing? Who were you with? And then it'll ask what was the emotion or feeling that you were having, and what was your negative automatic thought, like your intrusive thought. And then you have to write what is the evidence that supports the thought and what is the evidence that does not support the thought. And then you'd put an alternative thought. And then after that, you'll put the emotion that you're feeling by the end of the exercise. And this is sort of a top-down, rational way of approaching thoughts. And this has helped me a couple times. It doesn't help with everything. And again, this won't help everyone, but I hope that, maybe this will help someone. All right, so one moment, I need to drink. Do you have anything else to add, Jaden? We are nearing the end, but I have something else to share from one of our subscribers. But first, I just really need a drink.
Alrighty then.
Jane, use your voice changer, because that's fun. Also, I have stream alerts now, so if you subscribe to the channel, you'll see it pop up on the screen. Satisfying. All right, Jaden. Let's hear it.
And this is what this one sounds like, I suppose.
What? On stage? That doesn't sound any different because you don't have voice mod selected, Jaden. It's okay. We'll do some of your funny.
Ah, dang it.
Oh. We'll do some of your funny voices afterwards. Okay, I gotta read this. So, okay. So we have a special message from one of our members, one of our Super Waffle Blue members. You can also become a Super Waffle Blue member, or we also have several different tiers. You can become a member of the channel, basically, if you want to join us on Patreon or on YouTube. We have YouTube memberships as well. Here's the link to my Patreon. Hopefully that works. And just any of the blue tiers, any of those will support this channel specifically. And you get to do some awesome things, like you get access to a behind the scenes like VIP lounge in the Discord server. You get a special Discord role. And for each live stream, you can share a special message, like a positive message or advice or anything with our WaffleCast audience. So this one is from Danny, Danny Bono, our Super Waffle Blue subscriber. And he says, no doubt, if you cater to someone's excessive reassurance seeking, your intentions are probably in the right place. It can be difficult to watch someone, especially someone you love, struggle in such a way, so your inclination may be to simply give them what they seemingly need to feel better. However, in the end, your efforts are likely only hardening the hold that OCD has on them. Do you agree? Why or why not? What are some things that can result from excessive reassurance-seeking OCD, and how do you cope with and or manage them? Those are some interesting prompts, and maybe we can talk about that more in the Neurolucia general chat if we want to. But yeah, that's a very good point. Like, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, that you know, people obviously mean well when they want to give reassurance to the person with OCD, but sometimes it really just can reinforce the OCD. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. If you want to talk about this topic more, if you want more support, you know, feel free to join our Discord server, and we can have a conversation in the Neurolucia general chat if you would like. We are not therapists though, just so you know. Like, we're very open to talking about mental health issues and stuff, but yeah. And also we are having a movie night this Saturday too. So if you'd like to join us, we're going to be watching the movie Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. That's going to be a lot of fun. We vote on our movies as well. So if like you have an idea for a movie that you want to watch, you can suggest it in our movies channel that we have in our Discord. And yeah, it's going to be super fun. We usually have our movie nights the end of the month. So like the last Saturday of the month. And then this Sunday I am streaming on my Ginger Snaspy channel. That is my VTubing / gaming channel that I have on there, where I'm usually pretty formal on this channel, but I kind of just let loose and go crazy on my Ginger Snaspy channel. So that'll be fun. I'm going to be playing Monkey Island 2, continuing from where I left off in that game. Very fun game. Super awesome. So anyway, I hope to see you there, and I hope to also see you for the next WaffleCast next month, and I will keep you all updated on what we're going to be doing and what we'll be talking about then. And for all of you who watched on YouTube, thank you. For all of you who listened on Spotify or Anchor, thank you as well. I always appreciate listeners, so we can increase awareness of mental health issues. And yeah, feel free to share the podcast with someone if you feel like it could help. And if you want to know a couple other topics that we're thinking about discussing, let me bring up my list here. I got a list of topic ideas here. We have. I might actually talk more about OCD in the future because there are other people that I know with OCD. There are possibly some professionals that I know I might be able to bring on. I don't really know for sure. We could talk about things like PTSD. We could talk about experience of gender. We could talk about special interests. That was another one that was suggested. If you want to suggest anything, join our Discord and just suggest it in the WaffleCast channel. And we talk about things like employment, social issues, SSI. I know that's kind of a thing that I deal with. Is, you know, lots of stuff relating to SSI. I got a pretty long list of ideas actually here. Yay! And if you want to keep up with our events, I've got a link for that as well. We have a calendar. You can find it at this link here that I'm pasting into the stream. And we also, if you're listening and you want a link to that, we have that in the Discord as well. And I also have a website, neurolucia.com. And on that website, you can also find the event calendar there as well. And pretty much any information on anything relating to my channels, if you want to, you know, subscribe or anything. We also have, like I've said before, Patreon. I think for the people who are listening, because I couldn't send a link, it is patreon.com/neurolucia. Anyway, I ranted on for way too long. Do you have anything else to add, Jaden? Oh yeah, you were gonna do some funny voices, weren't you? Let's hear some funny voices. He's setting it up. Da, 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 da.
Okay, there we go. Now I can just, like, yeah.
It's Darth Vader! Are you my father?
No, I am his father. This is
Who?
really good on this mic.
No, what is it in a plot twist? You are my mother.
I doubt it.
I don't know, we could change your gender.
You know, Disney just might.
You never know. Let's get, yeah, female representation. We'll have a female Darth Vader. Alright, well, anyway, mute your mic because I'm echoing. Oh no.
Clean up an aisle 2.
Sorry, that was me. I spilled my fizzy drink. Yep, alright. Anyway, there we go. Anyway, if y'all want to like hang out with us more, like I'll be streaming on Sunday, and we'll have a movie night this Saturday, just as a reminder. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks for the awesome conversation, and hope it helped. And again, if you want to talk more on this topic, please join our Discord. Have a good night. Bye. Say bye, Jaden.
Bye, Jaden.
Okay.